technology is always a solution in the crisis. So technology will be really handy. There are multiple areas in which this technology would be adopted. One area is in the conduction of admission tests. The other area where technology definitely will play a most important role is in the learning space.
For online education to really become mainstream and enroll millions of students rather than hundreds of thousands of students, we need to have online degrees that are accredited by the various agencies.
My message to all the students and the higher education stakeholders is we need to double our efforts in this time in order to sustain and keep our economy afloat.
In India, we have to look at technology and education 4.0 as actually providing education to the uneducated, people who are not getting quality education.
Education 3.0 was nothing but technology driven. This is now going to be a permanent feature and is now going to figure in all the teaching learning activities of times to come.
So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another session of College Dunia Connect for educational institutions in Maharashtra, where we bring the stalwarts of higher education together on one platform. I'm your host, Charu Jain, and I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all our panelists and viewers for the session today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. A quick introduction about College Dunia. So College Dunia started in 2014 with humble beginnings, and in a short span of 6 years, we have grown into a strong team of 1,000 plus members with 10 plus offices pan India. Our traffic and engagements have grown exponentially in the past few years, and we've also launched new products under the College Dunia umbrella, like CD Social, CD Events, CD Study Abroad, and many more are in the pipeline. Being the flag bearers of performance-based campaigns in India, we have transformed the market to shift focus towards ROI-driven and result-oriented campaigns that are backed by data. Now, I'd like to introduce our audiences to all the panelists who've joined us for the discussion today. I'll start with Dr. Keshav Nandurkar. He's the trustee and principal of K.K. Wagh Institute of Engineering Education and Research in Nasik since September 2004, and is also the member of the board of directors for K.K. Wagh Education Society. He has an experience of around 3 decades in the field of technical education and is instrumental in starting PG programs with research centers and getting accreditation for the institute. Welcome, Dr. Keshav.
Thank you.
Dr. Neeraj Vyavhare. He's the campus director for D.Y. Patil Pratishthan in Pune. He has about 20 years of teaching experience, and under his astute leadership, Dr. D.Y. Patil College of Pharmacy has received a permanent affiliation from SPPU, having secured a commendable rank in the first 75 colleges at all India level in NIRF conducted by MHRD Government of India. And the UG course has also been accredited twice. Welcome, Dr. Neeraj.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Next, we have on the panel Ms. Kritika Padore. She is a founder member of Vijay Bhumi University. Ms. Kritika is an alumnus of National Law University, Delhi. She has practiced extensively in the Karnataka High Court, Delhi High Court and Supreme Court of India. Welcome, Ms. Kritika.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation this evening.
And we have Dr. Matthew on the panel as well. And Dr. Matthew has just joined us.
I can see myself.
Are you able to?
Thank you. Sure, thank you.
Dr. Matthew, are you able to hear us?
Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry for the mess up. Thank you.
All right. So Dr. Matthew Joseph is the principal of the Pillai HOC College of Engineering and Technology. He brings a wealth of experience from the various leadership positions he has had in academic, research and managerial domains for nearly 30 years. He was also the UGC nominee for assessing the skill development program of Pune University, an expert member of AICTE and DTE for various inspections and other activities. Welcome, Dr. Matthew.
Thank you.
All right, sir. Next, we have Dr. Shaini Chib on the panel. She is the director of the Datta Meghe Institute of Management Studies since the last 6 years. She is also the research head at the institute and has been appointed as an adjunct faculty with SEJI University, Malaysia. With a proven ability in team building and direction, she has also organized various national and international conferences. Welcome, Dr. Shaini.
Thank you.
All right, so just to introduce our audiences to our topic for today, I'd like to begin by saying that in 2021, as the world is still battling the coronavirus pandemic, India has seen a highly disruptive second wave and is faced with many challenges ahead. We have seen major shifts in the functioning of the educational institutes in the last 1.5 years. And in every crisis, there are always those who refuse to bow down and rise to the occasion. The COVID pandemic gave us no shortage of organizations and individuals who refused to let their world come to a grinding halt. The educational institutions in India can be seen in the same light. Cancellations, delays, and disruptions may have slowed them, but these institutes rose to the challenge and did not let the education cycle come to a complete stop. And hence, a fitting theme for our discussion today is how higher education institutes in Maharashtra rose up to the challenge of the pandemic and the way ahead. I'd like to get some opening thoughts from our dignitaries for this discussion and the topic that we have. I'd like to start with Dr. Neeraj. Dr. Neeraj, your opening thoughts.
Yes, thank you for giving me an opportunity to open the session. As the Team College Dunia representative has explained, that this corona pandemic has affected the country in all ways. Just now we are almost coming out of the second wave of corona. Mentally and physically, we are waiting that we will be a free bird as the pre-COVID session. But yesterday only the task force committee of the state of Maharashtra has given that the third wave may likely hit within 2 to 4 weeks. And as per the experts' opinion, the third wave will have more impact on the students or rather than children's. Although the children's category means up to 12 years, but some reports say that 12 to 18 or 20 years, it means that the most important next to parents, those will be affected in the educational institutes. Of course, in last 5 to 10 years, we have seen that the India is going to be was planning to go as full-fledged digital India. But I would say this corona pandemic has pushed it further by multiple folds. The most deteriorating thing of this pandemic is that they are taking human being away from each other. And hence, this physical distancing should not lead to a social distancing. It should not affect. When we say that the corona waves are going on one by one, we cannot just keep aside, keeping everything under key and lock system. And that's why the Educational Institute has come up with the various options. If you see the pre-COVID area, almost 12 to 13% of the expenses and infrastructure was utilized for the virtual teaching and learning process, which has speed up to 60 to 65% and in some area 80%. Of course, there is a vertical divide between the rural and urban area, which is bound to be there. But if you wanted to run the educational institutes and if you wanted to continue the imparting quality education, then there is no option other than going for the virtual platforms. So all the educational institutes, those who wanted to continue with this one, have adopted this. Simultaneously, if we see and if we expect that the third wave will be there, or after third wave there will be some complications related to this pandemic, we'll have to think about the continuous learning process using the virtual platform. But while using this virtual platform and its advantages, we cannot ignore the disadvantages of this. Passive learning or passive teaching and learning process is an important part other than the vertical divide between the rural and urban areas. At the same time, the quality infrastructure is to be built and provided to have an uninterrupted education is the second most important part. And third, being the pharmacy professional, I would like to touch the health hazards. If you see the reports that online education is uninterrupted education even in spite of these COVID waves and the lockdown, but that has given a variety of side effects or untoward effect in bargain. Audio, visual, auditory complications and neuropsychopharmacological complications are developing, or complaints are developing. A sense of isolation leading to anxiety and frustration is seen more in the students, but at the same time teachers are also affecting this. So how to address all these things? Yes, theoretically we can have a very good sessions, and certain sessions can be explained very well with these tools, but at the same time there are certain limitations as far as the practicals are concerned, and hence we have to think about the practical aspect of this. So I think that all the institutes will have a challenge to cope up with this, using the advantages and coming out of this limitation, so that the virtual platform will be really enjoyable platform, to my mind. Thank you.
Great to know your thoughts, sir. Moving on to Ms. Kritika. Ms. Kritika, your opening thoughts, please.
So I think I totally echo what Dr. Neeraj just shared with us. I mean, this was really a huge, monumental, and I think Herculean challenge that all institutions face. Now, if I have to talk about, I'd like to flag what are the major issues that one saw as an institution that we had to address. I think the first issue that all of us faced in the month of March was, this sudden need to, move to the digital medium. So while, like how Dr. Neeraj is sharing the fact that, yes, we were all well prepared with the onset of digitization. In fact, in most institutions, you could see that there were a lot of steps that were being taken in that direction. But I don't think anybody had fathomed the fact that suddenly everything would have to move online. Now, what that meant for institutions, and here I'm not only speaking about Vijayabhumi University or IFM institutions that I represent from Bangalore, I think I would also be talking for all the institutions that are here today. I mean, the first thing that we had to do was, we had to hold multiple, teacher training, faculty development programs for our faculty members. Right? So a lot of our faculty members were used to so many conventional methods of teaching pedagogy, like how Dr. Neeraj also shared that, teaching on the online medium is a completely different sort of an experience. I mean, the way you engage the class, there's so many different challenges that a teacher faces. You don't have people, you're sitting right in front of you. You cannot see them. You're not able to gauge that whether the student has absorbed what I have been able to teach or not. Plus also, you cannot make it monotonous. Otherwise, it would just seem like a one-way communication. Students switch off their video. So I think the first thing that we had to do as an institution was we kept a week-long session of just discussing, various pedagogies that, we could employ to make the classroom more interesting in the online medium. And there, I think one of the biggest things that really has been a success that has come out from the COVID-19 pandemic is the fact that educational institutions are now collaborating. We're all willing to be on a forum and actually exchange our ideas. So for example, when we were going through this teacher training program, the first thing that we did is we reached out to our international partners. We partnered with some of, the leading universities of, the world today. And we reached out to them that why don't you share your expertise with us? That, we are now going to be in this unique situation where we are going to be doing only digital teaching. So what is it? What are the different methodologies and pedagogies that one can engage? So I definitely felt that, there was a greater sense of collaboration that one saw. There was a greater sense of internationalization. So I think this was, again, a very critical point where educational institutions got a great chance to collaborate with foreign partners. I mean, look at how all of us are sitting and communicating today. We are all sitting in different parts of the country and we're all exchanging ideas today. So I think this really gave us a chance that, even our students could get access to a lot of faculty sitting in various different parts of the world. And I think as a lot of institutions, like not only us, but I'm sure other institutions also have exploited that opportunity and have found new ways of, meaningfully collaborate with institutions. I think the third and most important part, which was again touched upon very briefly, was mental and I think physical well-being. I think this was the other thing that we had to figure out as an institution, that how do we ensure the mental and physical well-being of our students? As we all know, it's been an extremely challenging time for students. Suddenly, you have realized that their socialization has been cut out. They can't take part in a lot of the extracurricular activities that they were taking part in. So I think one of the challenges that we faced was, how do we take all of these activities to the virtual platform? And I'm very happy to share that, what we did was the personality enhancement program, which is a part of our curriculum at the university, we rolled it out virtually. So students were virtually following the same timetable that they were following while they were at the university, where they were getting up in the morning, they were having their, their physical wellness class. They could choose like from an array of activities. We made it even more diverse to sort of make it more interesting for them. So, that was one thing. Another thing was we had to focus on the mental wellness aspect of it. And I think a lot of institutions are doing that now. We had to be appointed and we made sure that they had access to counselors because it was a very difficult time for them right now, even at home. The other thing was to ensure that there is socialization of students that's happening since they are not on campus anymore. So we had to be very creative in the kind of opportunities that we are creating for them to socialize. You have breakout rooms. We tried organizing a lot of their competitions also through the online medium. So that was something which was very interesting because it really helped them break the monotony that they were going through at home. I mean, we all have to be cognizant of the fact that these students were not used to spending so much of time locked up in their homes. So it was very difficult for them. Plus, not everybody is blessed with a, home which has huge surroundings. A lot of them were sharing spaces with their parents. It was extremely difficult. I mean, internet is limited. Computer resources are limited. So I think as an institution, we had to navigate with a lot of issue. The other thing I think, which I'm very happy to see a lot of institutions are doing today, is also changing a lot of their admission matrix. And I would like to flag that off today for the reason being that especially this admission cycle, it has been a very difficult time for the students who are in 12th standard. Because for the longest time, they've gone through the anxiety of knowing whether boards are happening, not happening. After that, they had to wait for such a long time to figure out what is the assessment matrix going to be. CBSE has recently announced the assessment matrix. Some states have decided to cancel the exam. Some states are yet to take a decision. But what I'm very happy to share about the community that we come from, I am seeing a lot of education institutions, including us, that have risen to the occasion and have actually decided to distance themselves from these examinations for this year. And I think that's a welcome move because that just shows that, how much as institutions we are willing to go towards the cause of the, the students. Like we can all imagine what is the anxiety that these students must be going through. So the fact that, today institutions are coming together, they're coming up with unique, creative admission criteria, which are irrespective of the board examinations. I think that's a great step in the, in this particular direction. Before I end, I think there are just two more things I'd like to talk about, which is internships and mentorship and research. All of this, internship, mentorship, research are a very big part of our curriculum at universities. And I think that, we have somehow now also cracked the code of how to take this online. It's amazing to see that, through Zoom, we have been able to do mentorship programs. Our mentors, because everybody is working from home, so we have gotten access to a large array of mentors who are also willing to be part of this exercise. If you talk about internships, now you see most internships have become digital internships. So it has been great that, institutions have been able to facilitate for those opportunities so that we ensure that, the students are not losing the time. That's the most important thing. Because for them, this is precious time. If they don't have these opportunities to show, at the end of it, it's going to cost them a lot. So I think that is one thing. And research also. I think, a lot of institutions, including us, have done this where research, publications, etc., faculties have mentored students online and things have happened in the right direction. So all in all, very difficult time for sure for institutions. It has definitely been a period where we have had to think out of the box quite a bit. But I also think that it's infused a new energy in all of us to innovate.
Very valid points, Ms. Kritika. There, I'd just like to take the discussion forward. And so COVID-19 has unknowingly brought in a positive paradigm shift towards digital learning, right? I want to ask you, Dr. Shaini, will the classroom learning continue to be the dominant mode of teaching in India? Do you think that that's going to be the case?
Okay. When I take the COVID situation and the online classes, I'll classify it into two parts, like pandemic 2020 time, like June 2020, and now we are in 2021. So students are more acquainted now, the faculties are more acquainted now. Now it has become like we can see that both the parties have become more techno savvy now. So when it started, lots of confusion, doubts, uncertainty was there. How to take the classes, how to engage them, how to conduct the exams. Lots sort of confusion was there. Now I think we are having more clarity. And what we have done is like we asked our faculty members to attend few faculty development programs, and at the same time we had few programs for our students. Then the first and foremost decision which we have taken is whether to go on Zoom, yeah, whether to have some other platform. So if I compare, no doubt we can't say that offline classes means offline classes. Yes, it dominates, no doubt. It is not only the teaching part, overall social development is there. Even the students, they come, they just during this online classes also, ma'am bula lo please. Okay, so they are fed up. They are fed up attending this online classes, and again, it is a big challenge for us whether the students are really attending. Okay, sometimes I have seen that the class is over, but still the student is on there. Okay, so I can't say, yeah, even you all will agree with me. Whatever class the offline offers, online I don't think it will offer. But it has made everybody techno savvy more. Now we are competent enough to use some new techniques, videos, quizzes, games. Even recently we have organized online dance program and online DJ for the students. So that level of techno savvy now we have developed.
I'd like to understand Dr. Keshav's thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, thank you. What was discussed so far, I agree with the panelists that yes, the period is very difficult, and it was really difficult to switch over, because I have been in this field for last 30 years teaching in the class, and suddenly you are asked to teach in the online mode, then it is not easy, as it was rightly said earlier. So we also did that, and the point of collaboration, I do appreciate that point, because we are a professional institute. I am representing engineering college, and we thought that in this period we must also collaborate with others, and we conducted a lot of teacher training programs from our engineering college, especially our computer and IT staff members. They conducted these programs, and I'm really glad to share with you that more than 1,500 teachers from all over the country, they attended those programs in online mode. So that was, I think, a social cause which we did. We never charged anything for that, and many teachers, they learned new techniques of conducting online sessions. Of course, there are a lot of difficulties in conducting the session, and for teachers as well as for students, there were difficulties. But this was the first activity which we did, and that was really helpful for most of the school teachers also, college teachers also. At our level also, we did that. The interesting part we did was the videos which we prepared, our teachers prepared, and that was circulated to the students, because that is something interesting they would like to learn through videos. The most important part, as Madam just now mentioned, is we have to understand whether they are really learning. Means we are teaching whether they are learning. That is the issue which is discussed everywhere. And people many times they keep it on. They are just registered login, and then they are not skipping. So how to keep their attention? That was a major issue. And one software tool which we are using earlier also, and then we used extensively in this period, last 1 year or something, was the Learnico tool, which is developed by MKCL, that is Maharashtra Knowledge Corporation, which is situated in Pune. They have developed this particular tool. The tool is very useful in the class. That is, after some time, you can pose a question and then ask the audience to reply. It is just like our Kaun Banega Crorepati. After some time, you can get an opinion poll, that type of thing. So then the students have to answer that. And that gives us a very good idea whether they are really attentive or not, how many people are attentive. The best part of that software is it also gives you assessment of the analysis. That is what happened during that particular period. How many people responded, who responded first, how many people responded in correct manner. So if you get a feedback immediately that yes, people are attentive, they are attending, they are learning, they are getting, most of the students are getting the right answer. If you try to get that, then maybe you can change the course of action. That yes, I have to repeat this concept again. Or okay, whatever speed I am doing, that is correct. Or people are attentive. That type of thing, because our theory says that 10 to 15 minutes is the maximum attention span. After that, the something has to be done. So we talk about active learning and all that. You have to change the activity to retain this thing. But in online, it is very difficult. So you have to do something in this way, keep them asking something, then they respond, then you also talk to them. Like that, we try to do that. That was, I think, one important thing. And it was discussed about assessment, because assessment is also an important part. Now we are talking about cancellation of 12th standard admission or exam or something like that, because it is difficult for the government to conduct on such a large scale. But for university and for colleges, anyway, we need some assessment. So assessment now it is done in an online manner. So most of the things they were done in multiple choice question type of thing. Now, many times we find that multiple choice questions are available on the net. People download and then put it in that. So what we did in our institute and all our KK Wagh Education Society, we have around 35 institutes, including school and colleges. We asked our people to develop our own multiple choice questions, and they were different from whatever they are available on the net. And in that, we tried to put it something challenging to the student, that unless he has learned the concept well, he cannot answer. That type of thing we tried to do. And we got a very good response from the student that yes, they want to really learn from that, and then they want to use those questions. So that was one thing which we tried to do. And the second thing was the quality of the content. Now, content is available. Most of the content is available on the net. You can go and search, and you can even refer to the, say, most prestigious universities like Stanford or Harvard, and then get the material from there. Then how to compare that material with our material? So that was the important issue. So we tried to ask them to use that material as well as the material prepared by our teachers. So that combination is always useful. Now, in the future, what we talk of will be a blended learning where there will be some online, some physical learning. And as you asked in the question earlier, that physical face-to-face interaction dominates in India, and lecturing is the most popular way of pedagogy, or that is what we are using. And I think that is important also, because you get a reaction immediately, face-to-face reaction. There are 60 students sitting in the class, whether they are responding, whether they are understanding, whether things are going on. All these things are very important. And there the teacher is like a king. He can use the classroom time as he wants and make it more interesting. So that will remain, and even in the future also it will remain, but it will be supplemented by online learning. So maybe we can ask them to go through some video or some material and then come back in the class and discuss about that. So some cooperative type of learning or blended learning can be happening. The most important issue for our professional colleges was the practical, because in engineering college, practical is very important, and we were missing that. So we tried to find out some solution on that. So first solution which we got was the virtual lab. It is developed by IIT Bombay and so many other institutes, prominent institutes they have developed. So we prepared a nodal center of that particular lab, and we made it available to all the students so that they can try their experiments, because experimentation is very important in engineering. So that virtual lab facility gives that particular opportunity to the student that they can change the parameters and check an experiment what happens. So that was a thing which we did. Second thing was the experiments we recorded. So whenever the people were permitted to come in the college, all our technical assistants and lab assistants, all of them, they recorded the experiment. They carried out the experiments on their own. The teacher had explained them, and that was also circulated to the student. That was one thing which we tried to do. And third part was the assignment, because whenever we are teaching, then something has to be recovered from the student, that whether they have really understood or not. So we tried to make some good assignments, uploaded that through our ERP. We have a good ERP system in the institute. Every student has a login in that, so he can download the assignment, prepare his own answer, and then again upload the answer. So that was the one way of interacting with the students, and we ensured that the teachers will give answers immediately to the students so that they will understand what was to be done, whether correction was required or it is to be uploaded. So these were some of the ways which we tried to use it. Now, as far as the city area is concerned, this is okay that the infrastructure is there, then people have mobile and internet and all facilities. But when it comes to the rural area, especially our education society, it has some schools in the rural area. There we found that it was not possible to conduct online lectures. So in that case, some of our teachers, they visited the places, and wherever it was permitted, they tried to club the students and try to teach them at their location. So that was one way it was done. Then they tried to call some parents and students to the classroom. That is, wherever it is possible. It may not be like our regular timetable or something, but whenever people are coming, they will discuss, their doubts were solved, and they will try to encourage. then they were not able to submit online assignments. So in that case, they were permitted to do it by hand and then submit at their own whenever they can submit it in the school. And that, based on that, the assessment was done. So these are some of the ways which we have found out to overcome this particular problem. And as Madam was saying, now we are getting more and more used to it, and probably we are getting more techno-savvy. Both teacher as well as student, they are making comfortable with this particular system. But again, as it was said, students are getting bored with them. They want to come to college because it is not only the lecturing, it is the total ecosystem of education, what we call it, in which the students learn. So they learn from their peers, they learn through the activities, they learn through the social this thing, then sports and games, whatever they are happening on the campus. So they learn through all these media. So they are actually looking forward that as soon as the pandemic is over, they can come to the campus and learn. And we are also looking forward for that. And if that happens, I think that time we will go for a blended type of learning. And as it was said, that ODL will also be helping. And during this period also, Coursera, as you might be knowing, they offered some free licenses. And around 1,000 courses were done by our staff members, and more than 3,000 courses were taken up by our students. And they also completed the entire certification. So that also is a great learning. And in the coming period, I think ODL will be very prominent, and that will be another source of learning for the students as well as for the teachers. So definitely the times are difficult, but we will be coming up out of that. Thank you.
Definitely, sir. Very insightful answers coming from you. Dr. Matthew, apart from the technology adoption, which other initiatives have helped your institute rise up to the challenge of COVID?
Could you repeat that last part?
Yeah, I'll repeat the question. Apart from technology adoption, which other initiatives have helped your institute rise up to the challenge of COVID?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Dr. Matthew, you're not audible.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're audible now.
Yeah.
It got switched off. We have heard that we all know that necessity is the mother of invention. But I have kind of turned it around that suffering is the mother of invention. The reason being, yes, we are all familiar with, at least those of us who are sitting in this panel, all of us are aware of how technology helps, and most of all in education or any other area. But we were, I think, least prepared for such a kind of quick transition to be faced in the academia, in the teaching, and most of all in the entire domain of education from school to college forever. And then to rise up to, see, after all, our contribution, our performance is measured by purely the performance of students in the exams as well as in their employment. And if that has to be supported, am I audible and clear?
Yes.
Supported, then we need to look very, very way different from what we are used to. In our case, I can tell you, most of all, many things which Dr. Keshav said is applicable to us also, because we are on an engineering college with 7 departments, and including automobile, mechanical, electrical, civil engineering. Of course, electronics and telecommunication, computer, IT, they are kind of given. And of these, you know that to conduct workshops and practicals in the areas of civil engineering, mechanical, automobile, merely simulations would not do. And therefore, we also had to invent ways by which we would add value to students. Recording of each assignment that would be done by the students. We have a Lightboard studio, and the teachers would record normally what would happen in a practical environment and make it available to students. Then using other, easily available open source software, all those things were there. But if you ask me to kind of quantify in terms of the work done, I would consider in the last 1 year, that is starting in April 2020 till now, we would probably have done at least 50% or more work than one would do in a normal year. The reason being, I think there is some double sound coming, so I don't know why.
It's okay, sir. It's all right.
Yes, okay. Primarily because of, although it is digital, the kind of resources that were available, which normally one would not be able to make use of. For example, the number of webinars and the work of that kind, and especially from resource persons who would not be available otherwise. Here they could sit in the comfort of their own homes and speak to students and faculty, large numbers of them, as well as take part in the offerings of other institutions, which we would normally would not be able to collaborate or these were, I think, a great, if you ask me, I'm a great optimist of this pandemic because it has given us enormous opportunities. And two things which we did over and above. One, it's important now, we say that our students are all unemployable and I consider it a kind of nonsense. But the fact is, we have made them unemployable, we are responsible for it. So, we said we should quantify the employability of a student. So, in a way, calculate the employability index. So, we kind of identified a large, which has been going on for the last 2 years, now just picked up a lot. Second, what kind of value are we adding to the students? So, we do a kind of a value add metric. So, see, employability index should be able to tell an industry that this student at the time he joined us, this was his level. Today, his level of employability is so and so in some kind of a number form. Second, the kind of value add index is more for the institute. What is the kind of value the faculty and the infrastructure, what is that we are contributing to a student's life? And this, I can tell you, I don't know, I wouldn't want to say that it is because of pandemic, we've been able to kind of start up these activities during this, in the last 6 months. Most of all, see, we have this internal, we always had this internal concept of mentoring. That means, see, we have almost 140 faculty members and nearly 2,800 students, all that. And about 20 plus students are mentored by one faculty. Yes, it has got its advantages and disadvantages. He said, in any case, it is also in tune with the NEP, new education policy and all that. He said we should look out for mentors from the industry and other institutions of repute, but not other colleges. Then, of course, they should be looking after their own students. And it has succeeded. It's primarily, a mentor does not necessarily have to come to the college every week or every month. They can interact from their homes, and it's only about 5 students given to per mentor in the industry mentor. And it is succeeding. It is, of course, it costs us a lot of money too. We have to give some honorarium to the industry mentors. And we also have found that, we are a 10-year, 12-year-old engineering college. The earlier batch students are now professionals who have reached a certain level of maturity. So we requested them to become mentors for us. Most of them are very happy to. And also mentors for young faculty. We have quite a few young faculty who are fresh masters and people who have got 3 years of experience and people who are doing their PhD and so on. Get them industry mentors to mentor them as well. Even that has been these are all kind of, I would not want to say it is because of the pandemic. Maybe we all got more time to think and the heads meeting. Every week we have a meeting of the heads of the departments. So these ideas come up, and we have been able to quickly implement. That is because of the generosity and goodwill of our management. So if you ask me, okay, has everything been all rosy during the pandemic? The obvious answer is no. If you ask me, the one major disappointment I have is that I'm a person who is like to see students on campus. There is a certain vibrancy. We have a big campus. There's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of energy which the students bring to the campus. That sadly is missing. For 5 weeks during between two pandemic warnings, we had for 5 weeks students coming on campus to carry out the practicals. But a class of 60 was divided into groups of 20 to avoid the distancing issues and things like that. It worked well. But then we had to go back to, it's very disappointing and disheartening to do that. I should also tell you one thing, the beauty of technology today. I was teaching online in the year 2005-06 to students who sit in Dubai and other countries, for a university from London sitting in Mumbai. That time we did not have the camera for the students. So I would have had some icons if there are 10 students, there will be some 10 dots on the, and their name would be written below. So I would keep asking every student every 4 or 5 minutes, are you with me? Because I don't know whether they are there or not there. Today, of course, it's very different. Students will switch on their computer and go elsewhere. That's a different thing. But at least we have some feeling is there. But if we call them, they come and show up their face and things like that. So the advantage of technology was also cannot be ignored. That maybe 10 years down the line, if we have to do something, we would probably do it very, very differently. So considering, coming back to also, let's say even technology teachers who would otherwise not have used many of the platforms which we are using today, or would not have been aware of the platforms which we are having today, have all got used to it. And yes, there are times that I feel bad. I start thinking, if this present pandemic had happened 10 years back, how we would have dealt with it. Today, I think we are very fortunate. We have got everything what we require, what we need, and also to make things available to students. And students make discoveries and come back and tell us, sir, this app is very useful. This application is wonderful. Things like that. It's a kind of a degree of collaboration between students and faculty. All these have happened purely because of the pandemic. So, all in all, I think it has been a reasonably good time. Thank you, and we carry forward with our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Neeraj, I'd like to understand from you what were some major behavioral changes that you have observed amongst the students during the pandemic, especially during their assessments or lectures?
Yes, very valid and important questions, because one way we are working hard on development of technology and using the various learning management tools to provide the uninterrupted teaching learning process to the students. But at the same time, we should not forget that to learn anything, the mental status, adaptability, and openness of mind is most important. Anything which hampers it adversely will not give a learning outcome what we are expecting. Rather than, I would say, forget about this pandemic and online learning platform, but from the kindergarten to the doctoral studies, play-way method is more important. And that's what the recent learning outcome based systems or the accreditation demands for co-learning, collaborative learning, blended learning, and teaching learning process. Even the teacher and students learn together. It's a co-learning process and not the one-way process. Now, these things are developed or get exposed when we meet each other. Basically, human being as a social animal. And if we consider the Indian continent, the socializing is much more important as compared to the Western countries. And hence, the development of personality and thereby enhancement of the teaching learning process takes place when we meet physically and adopt various ways of blended learning, which is when we go for the virtual platform. Theoretically, it has given a way to overcome the pandemic as far as the teaching learning is concerned. It means that this pandemic and lockdown did not affect the process, but outcome is more important than merely having the process. Now, when we see that the students or the teacher continuously just using the virtual platform, as I said earlier, they develop the sense of isolation, and it's a passive learning. Second important part, what the teaching or the beauty of teaching and the teacher is to understand the level of each and every student. There are certain poor learners, there are certain fast learners. So these students must be segregated, and which is very easily possible when we go for the conventional classroom teaching, which in online teaching is not possible. And hence, the loss of connectivity and the student engagements adversely affect. Dr. Keshav sir has already said that 15 to 20 minutes is the time duration till that you can have a proper engagement, and later on if you wanted to continue that, you need to change the teaching style, or you need to introduce certain case studies or the stories and experiences. But this experiential learning is more effective when we go for classroom, which is not possible over here. In such cases, when the online teaching has its own limitations, and in that if the students develop certain part of the adverse reactions or the side effects, then the teaching learning hampers very differently. Specifically, this isolation induced, what we call it as isolation induced behavioral disorders, which are very prominently seen among the students. Continuously using virtual platform or the screen, the enhanced screen time in turn reduces the adaptability. Similarly, this lockdown and virtual platform does not allow the students to get interacted in person, and the peer learning, co-learning was affected. This in turn leads to frustration among the students. And very typical behavioral pattern, which is behavioral changes, are exhibited in a diverse type. Some shows the depression, while others shows aggression. If you see the students who do not understand a particular session on online, they immediately start showing the aggression. But this teacher is not good, I do not want to continue this one. And as Dr. Kritika said, that the best way they would adopt is switch off their video, and they will do and engage their own activities. This is one way of their frustration that they are showing it, and which is very commonly seen. I have observed amongst various students, those who raise their grievances through various modes. We are very open that the students must raise their grievances to us by various ways. When we analyze this thing, we have come to know that there is some shade of behavioral changes that are taking place. When I discuss with some of my friends who are a counselor and psychiatrician, they have said that they have told me that there is almost 30 to 40% increase in the footfall, those who are approaching to them. And basically, this is because of isolation, virtual teaching, and lack of co-learning, peer learning, interactive learning, and meeting with the friends. As I think Dr. Matthew also has said, that when we go to the campus or physical learning or conventional learning, then only classroom learning is not the way to learn. When they visit to the canteen, when they meet their friends, discuss the thing, do the practicals with seniors, with classmates, every step they learn more and more things. Rather than, I would say, the certain areas where they want that remedy, which they cannot ask to their teacher, or they do not want to ask their teacher for the obvious reasons. Such kind of the doubt clearing takes place during the practicals and the peer learning. So all together, when it comes, it gives the blended learning. Now just understand the case if one student could not understand one point in a conventional classroom, or he or she do not want to ask it to the teacher, he has 10 more options. He can go to his senior and ask, so that there will be more clarification. During practicals, he can have a peer learning. He can ask his friend. If it is a general questions, he can ask to other college students, specifically when we have a campus culture, like our campus is there. So this campus culture provides the interaction with the students. And automatically the sense of isolation, the sense of poor learning, sense of lack of understanding, which in turn, if it is not addressed, can build the frustration or aggression among the students, will get a natural remedy over there, which is not possible when it is a remote learning. A student is having connected with the class, but it's a virtual connection, which will not answer for every question. So the question which he wanted to ask to the teacher but could not ask, that questions remain as a question in his mind, and that do not get a way to resolve. When this sense develops that I could not understand this, others are understanding it, when I could not understand, so I could not answer, that will adversely affect the assessment, evaluation, marks, and that things go on building and building. And when the students or anybody get that sense that I am not worth enough to compete with the others, that is the biggest loss of education system, I would say. And this frustration then build up, and it will adversely affect the learning process or performance. Now, what is happening at home, workplace? It has become a workplace for everyone. Both the parents who are working, they are sitting in their rooms and doing their work because they are also remotely working. So remote teaching, remote learning, remote working, everything is going on. So nobody is there to answer or address the issue which is faced by the students. And that in turn has linked with the behavioral changes. When these behavioral changes are taking place and it is not addressed, it will not be addressed always by the medicine, it will be addressed by the counseling, it will be addressed by drain out session, it will be addressed by interaction, it will be addressed by the peer sessions. How I could that students got fed up with this one, because in the last, that is the first wave, the Pune was for some duration was the topmost center as far as the corona cases were concerned. When the rest of the country was not that affected, and hence we understood that the Puneites and the students who were studying in the Pune, people used to look at the Puneites as a very dangerous centers of corona. Later on it has gone everywhere, and now it has almost pan-India, everyone has experienced this one. But when the first wave, the unlock was going on, and there was a step-by-step restrictions were lifted, at that time 10%, 20%, 25%, and then like on, the teachers and students were allowed to come. At that time, when it was at 10% or 20%, I have explained that literally there was a fight amongst the teachers and fight among the students that who will go and attend the sessions. It means that they were not happy or they were not very comfortable working at home, because all these parameters, what I have explained, were not there. And as a normal process of human tendency, or normal psychology says these are the very, very important things for maintaining the healthy mental and physical well-being. And if the mental well-being is not proper, then physical well-being will not be there. And here in lockdown, those who have affected with the COVID, they had a physical and mental. But at the same time, those who could not attend because of this lockdown, remote working or remote teaching and learning process, they were more affected mentally, and which was widely seen. Similarly, when the unlock took place after the first wave, and the things, of course, it was for 3 to 4 months only, but things went very normal, all these complaints were automatically got resolved. So it means that the natural process is an auto remedy for this, which was very, very effectively and prominently observed into this one. Third more important part, those who lost their near and dear, or the students specifically who lost their parents, apart from mental and physical, there was an emotional setback to them, and even financial. And these things are very closely related and leads to the syndrome. if there is a financial instability, if the students need to think that how I should pay my fees because I lost my parent, or the earning member is no more there, that has in turn built the more frustration, more depression among the students. I would like to tell you that when we have observed this kind of thing, we had a very good think tank at our campus to see that how this pandemic got affected, not only medical symptoms wise, but physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, psychologically, and financially. So we have worked on this part, and we have come out with the various remedies. And in the last week, when we came to know that a large number of our students have lost their parents, because we get the students from all over India, and hence our think tank has suggested to our management that we should do something for them. And I hereby say that we are having this unique, we have come up with this unique policy that any student from our schools to colleges who lost their parents, an unfortunate case, to COVID, we have waived off their 100% fees for the entire course. And it is not good to say the number, but I would say this is a caution. Till date, 72 students we found out, those who lost their parents. Now at least their financial crisis, which in turn will affect their teaching learning process, we'll have to find out the remedy for that. And hence, these psychological alterations that have found out has many reasons, and every reasons can be unique, every reasons can be individualized, and hence we have to have such policy where individualization of this therapy or individualization of remedy has to be found out. And definitely the post-COVID, I would say, of course, post-COVID there are certain symptoms. Parasomnia is one more symptom. The people who have recovered from COVID could not sleep. Those who used to sleep leisurely with 8 to 10 hours, their sleep duration has come down to just 2 hours. Just imagine the person cannot sleep could not sleep properly more than 2 hours. What kind of the mental and physical status he or she would have? So these are the things. But apart from that, the post-COVID mental changes or the mental status deterioration has to be addressed in a different way, and that will be an important session and important challenges for all the teachers. Otherwise, the teaching will not be a more pleasurable, or it will not be outcome based in real sense.
Yes, sir. So I'd like to build on that and ask Dr. Keshav a very specific question about what are the changes that you think could be made to the exams and assessments which are conducted by colleges to fit the new model of the digital learning?
Yeah, right. That is a quite important question, because as I said earlier also, assessment is very important in any learning. And when you talk of learning, we have to find out after some time whether the learning is going on or whether the person who is taught has learned the things or skills in a proper way or not. That is the most important part. And currently we are doing it with the help of multiple choice type of assessment in the online manner. But in the future, maybe we will have to make it in a different way. And our traditional paper and writing system was always there. Now we can have it in a different form. We can have it in a multiple choice form, or we can ask them to demonstrate the skills. So probably in the coming period, maybe we will ask them to demonstrate it. Maybe your learning ability, maybe your writing ability, or if you want to express your thoughts. And today we are doing it for our MBA students. We are asking them to prepare a video of say 2 or 3 minutes and then show it to the person. So that can be done. Or we can have a online session with them, like an interview or something, where we can judge whether they have really understood the things or not. And that can be another way of assessment. But sometimes continuous assessment has to be done, and every time we will have to find out whether whatever topics we are trying to cover, whether they have understood or not. And in this pandemic period, as it was said, that students faced a lot of difficulties, and one of the major difficulty was related to their placement. And there also they were feeling that whether we will be getting the placement or not, especially those who are in the final year, they were worried about their future and what will happen. So we requested most of our companies, those who come to the campus, to conduct the campus interviews online. And I'm really glad to share with you that around 100 companies have done that in the online fashion. And while doing that, as you know, that they have to assess the students. So they have also done it in a different way. And especially in the online way, that they have tried to conduct the assessment. And that assessment was very effective because they could recruit or select the students who will be joining in the coming period. Now, of course, there is a problem going on that the examination is not conducted. Final semester examination in Pune University is still pending. And so there is a problem with the students joining the companies. But the companies, they have conducted different ways of assessment, and then they have conducted the campus interviews, online type of interviews, online MCQ type of test, and then different scenarios, like they tell you different scenario and how you are going to respond to that. So that shows whether you have really developed that particular attitude or not. As far as skills are concerned, you can assess them on the basis of giving a task that yes, you are supposed to do this particular skill, or you are supposed to learn this particular skill. Now this task is given and you have to answer to that. If he is doing that task to a certain level, then we can assess that it is going to or it has been percolated. The main objective of this assessment, what I feel, is should be towards improvement. That is, if you are not understanding what is there, or what the skill what you wanted to learn is not up to that mark, then what is the way of improvement? So we will have to give them a chance to improve the performance further. So maybe reassessment will be another way, or asking it in a different way. Or sometimes if they are not comfortable, maybe we can change the way of assessing, or the person who is assessing, that can be changed, and try to make the person more comfortable, adjust with his situation. And as it was said that there are so many mental problems, financial problems, and so many other, the houses are small and there are so many problems to conduct. So try to adjust with them and then give them an opportunity to express again. So I think that will be the way of assessment further, that yes, the one attempt is there, then second attempt is there, and maybe you can take the score, best of the score, whatever is available. So even government has adopted that best of the score can be adopted. So that type of situation probably will be given. And now most of the things will be on the basis of, say, common interest test. What we are doing after 12th standard, we are adopting them to the engineering, we are using that. So there may be a common assessment test which will be judging them on different parameters, and those who are scoring well will be getting the further opportunities. So that type of, I think there will be a different change in the assessment pattern, but assessment has to be there. And unless we conduct it in the most transparent and proper way, the students will not be given their due credit. So I think the changes has to be in this proper way, and more opportunities are to be given to the students.
Right. Dr. Shaini, I'd like to understand your thoughts on this. What are the changes that should be made to assessments, keeping in mind the new model of digital learning?
Okay, like I'm representing a management college, so there was no practicals and like engineering students have. So we were having more liberty in case of assessment. So we started with the normal assessment, like writing the exams on paper and scan it and send it. That was a normal traditional way which we started. But after that, now we switched over to making small videos, giving practical assignments, like you need to make presentations, you need to make using some platforms and make some interactive videos and this type of things. And then we have started assessing them. So we started with a traditional, but we switched over to the more technical involved assignments now. And then as far as the exams are concerned, we are now using MCQs in place of the lengthy questions. That is the change which we have made. But now what we are emphasizing more on situational based assignments. So like we are taking the classes through G Suite and Google Classroom. So they need to upload it, and then we are giving them some time period, and then we are assessing them, and then we are declaring the results and sort of things we are doing.
All right. How has the EdTech sector and its companies helped mainstream education institutes like yours?
If you look at the EdTech companies, majorly one can talk in terms of the MOOCs environment, that is massive open online courses like Coursera, edX, and a whole host of them. And here in India, we have the NPTEL, that is NPTEL, that is National Technology Enhanced Learning for more majorly for engineering, science, and technology courses. They have been of some help, but otherwise, if you ask how the Indian industry per se, even the tech companies contribute, it's I think majorly now they are at least prepared to kind of interact with the students. A few years back, TCS, for example, started a program majorly for undergrad engineering, and even I took advantage of it for management students. One of their people would come primarily for this communication and soft skills development, not so much for the curriculum per se, because your regular teachers are there. That did help. Today, I think even also there is a greater willingness. Many of the people whom I have kind of requested to be mentors, both for the younger faculty as well as for students. They are all from the industry. And there are some of them very senior people, like at the level of a director, which I think it's a kind of commitment. They are not edutech companies, but the industry is showing willingness to participate and contribute to make the next generation of learners a lot better. I would like to add one thing to Dr. Keshav said regarding the evaluation. I think we also need to take students into confidence and make them also become assessors and evaluators. I have two wonderful stories to tell you. I was an engineering college principal. This is the second time. First time, around the 2002, I became the principal. About 4, that time there used to be very funny rules in colleges. If you fail in a certain number of papers for 2 or 3 semesters, then you have to leave the course. When I was at the SCT University, all young students, they were all girls. Can you imagine, after doing engineering for 2.5, 3 years, to leave the program and start a BA or BCom after that? I mean, I don't think that there could be anything more treacherous than that. We had about 7 students who were in that predicament. As principal, I went to the Vice Chancellor. I said, Madam, please give us a chance. I said, I just do not want to do about it. So that was a paper, I don't know how many of you on algorithm development, and it's majorly mathematical and things like that. So being principal, I did not want to take that responsibility because, you need to be sometimes a discretionary authority. So we asked all the people who could teach. None of them wanted it because they thought it is dangerous, because you have to go and teach students who have already failed. Then since there was nobody, I opted for it. Then the Vice Chancellor said, oh, it's a great relief. I taught them every day for about 3 or 4 weeks. Then the exams had to be taken. I took an internal exam. It was quite horrible. I mean, students would answer questions in the class, but when it came to writing on a paper during the exam, their performance was miserable. Then pretty soon after, there was the university exam also. I already said the paper. I corrected the paper, and then I put both together and see whether they will pass or not. They were on borderline. I said, if I send those marks, they are going to fail again, and which means that I cannot afford to take that risk. So what I did was that I called all the students. I told them that you have to write the answers, correct answers for all the questions, for both the internal, the external papers. I can't show it to them. I can't even tell them that I'm the one who has corrected them. But the internal exams which I took, I made them. I said, you can choose books, you can consult your senior people, you can consult anything, but you can't copy from each other. So they agreed, and after 2 days they came with the correct answers. I had already evaluated the internal marks. I had not shown it to them, but I had it on a sheet of paper. I did not put it on their answer books. So I told them, now you take your answer book of what you wrote for the exam, and you have the correct answers, go and evaluate it yourself. They said, no sir, we can't evaluate. I said, you have to evaluate I made them sit in a class. Can you imagine? Each one of them took about 2 hours to evaluate their own papers. I said, okay, you can't put marks on this paper, that is mine. You take a sheet of paper, for each question, you tell me how many marks you have to write that down and bring it to me. All the 7 of them brought it. So I took out they did not think that I had even evaluated. I took out my own marking, and mentally I had resolved that plus or minus 3 marks is it's always in terms of the benefit of students. That means if she has given 3 marks less than what I gave, she will get what I gave, that is more. And if she gives 3 more marks than what I gave, she will get that 3 marks which she gave for herself. So plus or minus 3 marks always in favor. Then I showed the results to the students. They were shocked, because most of them had given less marks than what I had given. So then I first question asked, do you think that I have been fair? They said, sir, you've been more than fair. I said, suppose we had not gone through this exercise, what would have been your thought? They said, we all thought you should have got more marks. Then, the next spontaneous reaction was, sir, this process should be carried on for every paper. But finally, they all passed, and that's a different. But making the students responsible for their own assessment and making them responsible partners will. One, I am a believer that it would change. Second, the final examination answer books are a kind of mystery in this country. I've been arguing in academic council and so on. The students should be given the answer books back and say, a confident teacher can say, this is the mark I have given you. You have any problem? Go through it and bring back to me. Then we will have a discussion. See, once we go to that level, all this reevaluation, all this kind of useless activities can be, and waste of time on top of that. You can imagine, I don't know how many of you are from Mumbai University, it can never declare a result on time. Primarily because of practices of this kind. So what we need is to be practical, and this I have also discussed with any number of senior people. They will all agree this is the right thing to do, but nobody seems to have the guts to say that we are going to practice it. And I am a very strong votary. Make the students accountable. You say that I have given you this many marks. You have any problem? Show it to me. What do you need more? I think we need to have a different. This is just to add to what Professor Keshav said. Thank you. I can tell you all kinds of funny stories of this kind. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, sir. I'd like to understand from Dr. Neeraj, what will education in Maharashtra look like in the year 2030?
2030?
Yes.
Definitely, I would say it would be a blended learning only. This pandemic has given the virtual platform, and within a 1 year span, as Dr. Matthew said, that the suffering is the mother of invention. In the similar way, now most of the teachers and the students are well versed with this, and they also understood the importance and the outcome of virtual platform, that affordability, connectivity, and creativity. In the last 1 year, I think that whatever the faculties who came and conducted the expert session is more than what the last 10 to 20 years have happened. So this has given a way, and because of pandemic, initially forcefully, we have adopted this virtual platform as a teaching learning process, which will continue. And wherever it is possible, that if you wanted to interact with an affordable way, this will be utilized for a gathering, for a meeting, as well as the real choice-based credit system, where we say that choice is given in a virtual platform, where you can have a different ways of evaluation and assessment of the students by giving some case studies, by giving puzzles, games, and playway method. So this will be a part. And even if you look at the national education policy, which is going to implement in few years down the line, it has also given that this freedom and addressing the multiple intelligence. The student should get the complete choice, what way of evaluation he would like to get evaluated, what way he would like to learn the things, continuous assessment, choice-based credit system. All these things are an example which are giving us the direction in the future. And hence, a typical multidisciplinary and a blended learning, where it will be a need-based combination of conventional classroom teaching and a virtual tools, using virtual tools. It will be an ideal blending. But I don't think personally, it's my personal opinion, that it cannot surpass or it cannot 100% replace the conventional classroom teaching. Even if you say the people have or the students have a typical mindset or a typical conditioning that this is my classroom and this should be the way of teaching. And hence, recently if you see that even though the virtual classes are going on, but more impactful classes as far as the learning outcome is concerned is by 3D classroom. Even the students are sitting at home, but they wanted to have a feel of actual class. So the teacher in 3D classroom is teaching, and even the teacher is getting that kind of the feeling that he is conducting a real class, not a virtual class. So his level of motivation, his level of participation in the teaching process increases. At the same time, because of the same feeling, the students' learning is enhanced. It means that whatever the conditioning that are taking place since years together of the students and of the teacher will definitely not allow to replace 100% one way of teaching by another way. And hence typically it has to be a blended. Only thing is that what is the percentage of virtual platform, what is the percentage of conventional classroom, what kind of the tools in the virtual teaching process, what kind of the methodology that is adopted in the conventional way. It may vary from topic to topic, or it may vary from case to case, but definitely it will be a purely blended learning. And as far as the concern, as far as the teaching learning outcome is concerned, I would say the combination of these various methodologies or teaching pedagogies is an ultimate solution to achieve the learning outcome. In the similar way, because of NEP and the market demand or the changing corporate demands, I would say, is forcing the educational institute to enter into multidisciplinary affair. If you look back for 10 to 20 years, say 20 years back, then the research and development wasn't pure in an isolation affair. One branch or one domain of people or researchers, what they are doing, that the another domain was not knowing. But today, if you really wanted to go for the research, which should be commercialized, or invention, which should be ultimately should be available to the public, then in that case, multidisciplinary affair is very important. And these things have started moving into this. I would like to just give one example. At a Pune-based startup, namely ThinCare, along with the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India's their funding, and my institution, that is D.Y. Patil College of Pharmacy, we came together and we have come up with the first kind of its mask, which we call as virucidal mask. That is, this mask will not only restrict the entry of coronavirus, but it will kill it. Virucidal means that the things or the process which kills the virus. And it has come into the market. And now we are in the process of tie-up with some of the giants, corporate giants, for the further commercialization of this. These educational institutes, startups, and established industries are coming up with the need-based research in the form of virucidal mask, which has been tested at RCB, Regional Center of Biotechnology, Faridabad, and which has given a 94% of its result. This itself is indicating that the future of education will be a blended learning, teaching learning, and a multidisciplinary, where the participants from the industry, educational institutes, and newer industries like startup and a freelancer will be coming together, and that will be addressing the need of society. The syllabus, selection of topic, easy access to the various discipline. This will focus the education and its outcome with respect to the current need of the society. If the education system is training the students, developing technocrats, or for our case, the pharmacists, those who really resolve the issues or address the issues of the society, then and only then I would say this will be a real teaching learning process, or outcome based education will achieve its target only when it is responsible to give, or it is capable to give that kind of results. And 2030, I don't know, 30, 35, 40, but the future of education will have a blended method of teaching and learning and multidisciplinary affair, which will focus to resolve or address the issues of society as per the time. That will be a scenario of this thing, and we have to prepare ourselves. Our teacher need to be prepared in that particular way, our labs to be prepared, our educational system has to be prepared. And I think that the one positive side of this pandemic, that it has given access to all of us to worldwide resources, is one of the trigger point, or it is one of the important point which will take towards this direction.
Right. So, taking a cue from your answer, I'd like to ask Dr. Keshav, so how long do you think it will take for all the institutes to adopt the initiatives that are proposed in the National Education Policy in 2020?
Yeah, that is a good question. In fact, I wanted to add to what Dr. Neeraj is saying. Definitely, there will be a multidisciplinary type of approach, and blended learning has to be there. But if you see the implementation of NEP, as you are rightly asking, the implementation, in my opinion, will be very fast. And they have already taken up some of the activities. You know that AICT has started an initiative with discussion with so many people. And people are coming up with the implementation, you can say roadmap or something, how it can be done. So that will be implemented fast. And with that, what will happen in next 10 to 15 years is the way in which the colleges are run will be changing. We will go away with the affiliated system, and then most of the colleges will be in a autonomous status. They will run their own courses, and we may have a different way of giving degree. Like already in some countries, they have started, say, micro degrees, that you complete some credits and then you get a degree. Then there can be a certification, that is, you acquire certain skills and then you will be getting a certification for that particular skill. Now, NEP also says about multiple entry and multiple exit. So you can enter at a course, you can do some other work and then come back again and then complete the course. That is also possible. So after 10 years, this will be a reality. It will not be this thing. It will be a reality. People will be doing multiple things, and people will be getting a choice to adopt to different things. Like I want to get some credits from music, I can do that along with my engineering. So all these things in a multidisciplinary setup will be adopted. Then NEP also talks about accreditation. So every institute will be accredited soon, or they will have to take some efforts to doing that. If they are not, then they will be attached to some other university. So I think that some of the big groups, like say DY Patil or any other group, or even like our group of KKY, we will be converting into our own university. And then we will be offering the courses which are required by the local community. So if something is important in Nasik, like say we have a grape city and wine is the major production over there, then why not to offer courses in winery? So today university is not offering, but tomorrow we will be offering, because it will be creating more jobs. So you can have a small universities restricted to that particular area, and they can start offering new courses. And I think this implementation of NEP will be becoming very fast, because it is an agenda taken up by the central government as well as state government has made up the task force. They have asked for so many suggestions, and we have given the suggestions from college side. Even personally, we have given some suggestions, and a lot of discussion is going on. on how to implement this thing. And the structure is going to change right from the school education. As you know, that 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 will be the structure, and then there will be the higher education. And most important will be the credit bank, what they are talking about. That is you can earn the credit from one this thing, and then you can transfer it to another institute and then implement it. I think that is a very good idea, innovative idea, where you can share the credits, and in whatever area you want, you can earn the credits, and that can give you a degree in another this thing. So that will be a transaction, you can say exchange, transaction, combination of things, and that will be really helpful for the people. Well, the other thing which is going to happen is there will be more, you can say, majors or specializations offers. Today we are not having that. We are having very restricted this thing. We talked about choice-based credit system, but it is not fully implemented in the university. You don't have variety of choices. So you get one or two choice, and most of the students, they take up that particular choice. But in coming period, we will be offering, say, major courses, minor courses, honors degrees, micro degrees, like that. We will be offering so many specializations in the new technology, and those who want to learn those technologies, they will take up those courses, they will get the certification. Even now we find that something was talked about MOOCs. Every MOOCs, this thing, say whether it is edX or Udemy or Coursera, they are giving their own certificates, and companies will be starting to accept those particular certificates. So you can do the course, get the certificate, and submit it to the employer. The employer will be accepting it. So these type of things are going to change, and the traditional way of doing it in a 4 years degree and then completing it in 4 years and then getting it from the university may not have the same impact. So the things will be changing. NEP will be implemented. There will be multiple choices to the people, and there will be different forms of degree. That is, now they are talking about 1 year certificate, 2 years diploma, the 3rd year degree. So a lot of choices will be available, and those who want, they can quit the education at that time, do some job, do some work, and then come back again and complete the education. So that will be a really good opportunity for most of the people. And what we see today, that most of the jobs which will be coming in future, they will not be like the jobs which are done today. 65% of the jobs will be abolished, and new type of jobs will be coming. So we have to train the people for those jobs, and then those training have to be done by the colleges, and I think that will be done in the coming period.
Okay. Moving on to Dr. Matthew. So before I put up my question, I would just like to remind the viewers, keep pouring in your questions. We'll be starting with the Q&A session very soon. So I have one last question for Dr. Matthew. So as what Dr. Keshav also suggested about, the new courses that will be getting a higher focus in the coming years, do you think subjects like data science and design thinking should be introduced to the students at an early age, like before K-12?
Sure, I am a very, very strong votary of it. But these terms like data science and design thinking and all are fairly new terminologies. But fundamentally, they are all for problem solving. And how we introduce these areas to school children, let's say from even I would suggest 4th standard onwards, it's a matter of way of teaching new areas to students. For example, once I saw in Switzerland a toy which a friend of mine bought for his son who was in the 7th class. Amazing toy. If you want to just use that toy, a child has to apply his mind. It's not very Herculean, but amazing, very interesting, very absorbing, as well as keeps the attention of a child. And I think what we need is to teach our children to become problem solvers. So introducing the techniques of design thinking or any of those, we are not going to start teaching Python and advanced probability and so on to 4th standard children. But how do you bring them over a period of time, by the time they reach from 4th standard to 12th standard, what is the level of proficiency they would have? And also, see, it's not for everybody. So, the children should have the freedom to opt for what they would like to, but if it is introduced in a way, it's in a kind of a playful, gaming, all those things it is going to stay, and I think the earlier one starts, the better. I also keep telling, I think the best education I got, although my school got the electricity when I was only in 10th standard, but by the time we reached 10th standard, we were all capable of solving problems. And I think I still have the greatest respect for that. And that basic foundation has helped me all along. And I'm a very strong votary of this proposition that, start introducing, but not as a lot of lectures and definitions and things of that kind. Certainly no. But how do we need to be more imaginative, and we need to create a better environment and infrastructure for students to introduce these topics. Thank you.
All right. I'd like to open up the Q&A session. So we have two questions from viewers of very similar nature and a very important and valid point. So if we talk about the motivation that is currently present in the minds of the students, and how the overall mental health of the students is getting impacted ever since the past 1.5 years since the pandemic has hit us. How are the institutes catering to the mental health of the students and ensuring that they stay motivated to achieve their goals? Dr. Keshav, if you can take up.
Yeah. So one thing I would like to share on this particular issue is the most important thing which institute can do, and rather we are doing it, is the communication. And it was discussed earlier also that counselors are there. Almost every institute is having a counselor. But what we have been doing since last, you can say March or April, was continuous communication with the students as well as their parents, because we know that the parents are also under a lot of stress and the students are also under stress. And if they want to maintain their mental, you can say, positiveness or attitude, then counseling and communication is required. So what is happening, that we have to keep on telling them that these are the things happening, then when will be the exams, how it will be done. Then somebody talked about financial condition, then you have to keep on telling them that, okay, even if you are not able to pay the fees, we are not going to take any action against you. We will be continuing the education. Your academic will not be at a loss. So that type of assurance has to be continuously given and keep them motivating. As Professor was talking about mentoring. Now we have our own mentors. He was talking, that was a very good idea that you should have a mentor from industry or alumni as a mentor. But we have a mentor from our institute, and we ensured right from the last 1 year that the mentor keeps on talking with the mentees. So around 15 to 20 students are there. Continuously they keep on asking them what is happening. And it is not only academic. You have to ask them about their well-being, about their family, about their situation, and try to motivate that we are with you. So that type of communication, if you continuously keep on communicating with the students as well as their parents, I think that is the best way of maintaining their mental health as well as motivating them and keep their spirit up.
Got it. Dr. Neeraj, your thoughts on this?
Yes, part of that I have already explained, but still what I am also in agreeing with the Nandurkar sir, that the continuous communication with the students may resolve many problems, because this is specifically an isolation related, that he or she is not able to speak about the problems what we have faced. Second important part is that there should be a regular counselor that we do have, that here conduct the sessions, and typically without any topic. The sessions will be without topic. It is just interaction with the students, and they can raise their grievances or they can put their complaints, and accordingly solutions can be found out. Third more important thing is what we are doing at our end, that the sessions, general session by the role models. See, corona pandemic or this thing is one of the issue which came across. Similarly, many people may not be on mass level, but individually might have suffered from variety of such obstacle at their own life. Such kind of the role models and the people who have surpassed and accepted the challenges and come out of with its flying colors and doing well. Such the case studies, actually their sessions is having a great impact on the students. Fourth is, since we know that this virtual teaching has limitations of they cannot have a individualized teaching, like those slow learners cannot be addressed very well. So in such cases, the remedial classes is helping them, because one part that they are demotivated because they are not able to understand the things in a proper way what generally they understand in the conventional classroom. So remedial classes is helping a lot. Similarly, majority of the students, because of this long span of 1.5 years, these virtual classrooms are going on, they are more worried about their placements. And here at our campus, we have a central placement cell, which is taking care of the students in all the ways. They are continuously conducting the sessions and making them aware how the future placement statistics or future placement scenario will be there. Like today's remote learning will be helpful for them, because in future variety of jobs will be from the as a type of remote working. It is said that by 2.0 and 2.4, 47% of the learning management tools will be AI based. So similarly, these tools are coming into the market. The development of that tools will be a major area where the placement will be done. So the changing scenario of the placement will be explained to them, and in turn it will be convinced that this remote learning, teaching learning is a sort of training to them in future to address the remote working. So these are the various issues that are responsible to demotivate or demoralize the students. So we have to find out that, and we are finding out and giving a solution to each and every mistake. So counseling, placement activities, case studies, sessions by the role models are collectively is giving some sort of motivation to the students.
All right. On that note, I'd like to wrap up the session and thank all our panelists and viewers for joining us for this immersive discussion today. Thank you, everyone. And we'd like to connect with all the dignitaries on call as well to discuss further possibilities of a collaboration and how College Dunia can assist you with problems that your institutes might be facing. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a nice session.
Thank you very much.
Nicely conducted. Thank you for conducting in a very nice manner. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.